Howdy guys, so we're going to go over some redstone components today because I've had some questions, and apparently I got elected because I'm the best redstone guy that everyone knows. Actually, I'm terrible at it, but just bear with me. So this is what I know. We're going to cover repeaters right now. So you're going to go over pretty much everything you can think of about a repeater. I'm sure I'll miss a few, but let's just jump right into it. The first thing about a repeater is that it's directional. It works like a diode. So you can see that I turn this switch on, turn this switch on. The only difference is the direction that the repeater is sitting. When you place it, it's like that. Obviously that one's set backwards like that. So it works like a diode or a trapdoor. It allows the redstone pulse to go one direction, but not the not the other way. All right. Next up, if we can get this dumb sheep out of the way and pick up his parts, there you go. All right, is that you can see that the normal redstone signal goes 15 blocks. Just trust me, that's 15 blocks. That piston is raised. The next one is 16 blocks, and you'll see that that piston doesn't raise because the redstone signal has fizzled out. That's 15, that's 16. No umpity with the piston. All right, so what a repeater does is that it repeats the original signal of this. So you'll see how bright red this is compared to how bright red it is right past that repeater. Okay? So it will repeat the same distance as the original switch. So it would repeat 15. So if you look at this one, it also works because from this point in front of it to this piston is 15 blocks. Okay? And as you can see, this one fizzled out because right here is 15, that's 16, no umpity. Okay. Next up, this is a little used feature of a repeater. I just wanted to cover it because it is there and you should know about it. And that's called the repeater lock. When I look at this switch, keep your eyes on this repeater right here. And you see that little black bar, that's called a repeater lock. And when I turn this off, it would rather take the signal from the side than from the back. So you can see that this signal turns off before this signal does because I've got these repeaters set on a different timing, and we'll get to that in just a minute. So it's rather taking this signal than the signal it's receiving from the rear, or lack of a signal in this case. So repeater lock. All right, next up, we're going to talk about timings. All right, so you can see that that's just a bunch of repeaters set on their stock setting, so just placed it down. Versus just a redstone line. You can see how much faster the redstone line itself ignites than those repeaters. Right? Also turns off much faster. All right, so repeaters are adjustable. When you place them down, you can tap on them to adjust their timing. And each of those settings is called a tick. So this is set on 0 tick. This one's set on 1, 2, 3. Or maybe that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and that's 4. Right. Apologize there. So whenever you put a repeater down, that's 1 tick. And then 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right. All right. So when we turn this one on, you'll see how much slower it takes for each repeater to light up. It also takes that much longer for them to turn off. So that's because I've delayed those repeaters. Now we can look at that's on no delay, that's on full delay, and that's no delay whatsoever, just a straight up redstone line. Okay, so next up, it's important to know that when you ignite a block, when you push redstone signal into a block from a repeater, that actually from a redstone line at all, what a repeater really works well in this case, that block becomes ignited and we'll carry it through. So we can actually replace, no, it has to be a repeater, I'm sorry. All right, so that becomes live, which powers the redstone behind it. And yes, it also works on top, which will break this back. So you can see that that lights up, okay? And this is not directional. You can do it from the sides as well, because I'm making this block hot, if you will, which passes the redstone signal through it. This does not work on glass or slabs, which can actually be a convenient thing because there's sometimes you don't want a block getting hot when you've got redstone near it. All right, next up we've got a little thing called, I don't know what it's called. Anyway, it's something that I came up with. It's just kind of an interesting thing that happens with repeaters into sand blocks set on top of a piston. See how much faster that piston in the back is. So all I've done there is put a repeater into that sand block and then a redstone line going into the side of the piston. Okay? This can be useful for harvesting crops and things. Sometimes you want to move a piston quite fast, and that's how to do it. It also retracts that piston. Boom, boom. Yeah, quite fast. All right. Important to note the orientation. You have to be pushing the redstone signal into that sand block from that repeater. If you try it like this, yeah, you raise the piston because of this going into the side and this going in here, but it's not going through the sand. Okay? Next up, we have this little comparison. So we know that this works because the repeater is making this block live. This redstone on top of it is picking that up and carrying it. A repeater on top will not carry that signal through. This can be annoying when you're building and you're like, why isn't this redstone lit? Well, this is why. If you simply move that repeater up one, then it works. All right? And that's repeaters. So hopefully we've covered everything about repeaters, and we'll move on to comparators here in just a little bit. Thanks so much. Hey guys, I know it said we were going to talk about comparators next, but I need to make a brief detour and go down redstone signal and what it can go up and how you can use this to your advantage and what it can go down and so on and so forth. So first off, it used to be that redstone signal would go up glass but not back down it. And you can see that it's going up there, and this one works just fine going down. So that's rather new. The other thing that's rather new is that you can see the redstone through the glass. It used to be when you stood underneath of it, it disappeared. Alright, so important to note that glass does not negate a down signal. However, slabs do. So you can see that the redstone signal is clearly going up these slabs. Now I want you to notice too, the slabs are, on the top slab side, not on the bottom. If you put it on the bottom, you simply can't put redstone on it. So I'll show you that real quick. Put it on the bottom, can't put redstone on it. Just doesn't work. Not torches, not nothing. All right, so we'll go ahead and turn that off, and we'll prove that we can't send redstone signal down it. All right, so that's really important. There are many farms that you'll want to build over time that you will find a use for this slab method. The other method you can use instead of going up like stair steps is actually to go in this direction, which of course is going to be a pain, but so we can demonstrate this real quick, that one there shall ignite as well. So you can actually stagger them like this, like a zipper on up instead of going out to one side, and the redstone will, go up that column but not back down it. Okay, so the next thing is the torch tower. Now, if you have a signal going into the bottom block with a torch above it, the next torch up will then turn off, and the next torch up will turn on, and the next torch up will turn off. And this is essentially reversing the polarity of the torch that's in between. If you look, when we power the bottom block, now it just does the exact opposite thing. So, using this, you can send a redstone signal straight up. We'll just go ahead and put a lamp there. And, power something straight up above you. Otherwise, you're back to stair steps and, gooping around that way. The hard part about this type of thing is that you have to get the height right. So if you go a little high, then you got to step back down and you got to figure out the every other, and it takes some figuring. Now this and the next one are very useful for like a zombie pigman farm ignition system, in that you need to update a lava block. we'll get to all that eventually. But the important thing is that you can also use redstone lamps to send a signal up and down, just like those blocks. So you can actually see what's going on, as opposed to those where you really don't understand maybe what's happening to that block. Well, you can see what's going on here. And it's kind of pretty too. Dispensers or droppers do the same exact thing, and you can hear them tick. The great thing about the redstone lamps is that there's no noise. There's some lights involved, but for a farm, maybe you don't want to hear this ticking all the time. And lamps would be better. All right. Let's see. There was one other thing I was thinking of, and now I can't remember it. We'll come back in a minute, and maybe I'll have remembered it by then. But in the meantime, brace yourself. Comparators, they're on the horizon. All right, so I remembered what I was going to say. Yeah, I wanted to talk about torches real quick. So we'll do a brief little interlude of torches before we get over to comparators. So hang on tight. All right, so torches are a power source. So if we just put down a torch and then a redstone, you see that it is powering the redstone next to it. However, torches also have this slightly strange little feature to them in that they can be turned off. So when I power that block, which those torches are attached to, it turns the torches off. So this is really important. So I've used a button here just to kind of demonstrate. When I press this button, you'll see that that turns off. That's all because of that torch. Cal, don't disrupt the video. Get out of here. Go. Keep going. Right into it. Okay. All right, so we have a redstone line coming into this block. The redstone torch on the back side of it. Cal, really? Dude. Oh, great. He brought a piggy friend. Anyway. Yeah. So you can see what's going on there. It reverses the polarity of the line. So we can do that with a lever as well. And there it is. So what does that do? Well, there's plenty of uses for that. There are times when you want a signal to be on all the time, such as, let's say, like you're building a door, okay? And you have a piston that you want extended. You want this piston out because that closes your door. But then when you want to go in your door, you want to be able to press a button, go through, and then have it close behind you. All right? And there's ways, we'll get to this when we get to comparators, to build pulse extenders so that when you do this, that would stay open for longer. Because that would be, you'd have to sprint through there the way it is right now. And with a pulse extender, then you can go much more slowly and, time it so that it takes 5 or 10 seconds, whatever you'd like, for that door to close again. All right, so but the main point of this was that you can reverse the polarity of the line using a redstone torch by attaching it to the block in such a way, just like that right there, or even from the top. So there you go. From the top works as well. All right, so let's get over to comparators, I think, unless I think of something else in the meantime. Okay, so we're back with comparators. Comparators. Anyway, yeah, I'm horrible at singing. What do comparators do? Comparators compare. Well, kind of. So what we're looking at is, this is a beehive chest, composter, CD player, or jukebox, yeah, furnace, a cauldron, and a bookshelf, and a hopper. Probably the hopper is the most important one, but we'll get to that. So what it's able to sense is how many items are in a thing. So in this case, if it was a full beehive, bee nest, beehive, it would give out a redstone pulse of 5, 5 blocks long. And that's important because then you can come up with an auto harvester to harvest the honey out of that without having to manually do it. And by knowing how much redstone signal comes off of things, you can automate things pretty easily. So the comparator can, there's another sheep, go away, can not only compare in one direction, just directly off the item, it actually can compare through a block. So you'll notice that this comparator is actually giving the same exact redstone So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then blank. As we put more items in this chest, so let's just dump the junk in there, and you will see that the that it gives a longer pulse, a longer redstone line. Pardon me. Same with that direction. And so you can sense how many items are in a chest or that sort of thing. In the composter's case, it will sense how full the composter is. So you can see it building until it's ready to, there it is, and then done. All right, with the record player, it'll give a 1 block long thing with a record inserted, or none with nothing inserted. I don't know why. This seems to be just a PE thing. No music, nothing you can do. They look like they're playing music, but they don't seem to. But note blocks do work. At any rate, same with furnaces. You notice, take the items out, no signal, put the items in, signal. Okay, and it'll, I'm guessing, yeah, we would have to run it, but anyway, you can use glass bottles, if I could find them, to demonstrate. Where are the glass bottles at? I guess they're in nature. Oh, I don't know, let me just look them up. Bottles, come on, empty. Oh, there we go. Okay, so if we take some of the water out of that, you can see that the redstone signal is reduced on down to nothing. And then if we put a bucket of water in there, it would be reset. Books are kind of weird. It depends on how many pages long it is and that sort of thing, but you can actually flip through one of these written books that you put on, I forget what workstation this is called, geez. This thing, yeah, the lectern. And that will alter the length of the redstone line. In this case, it's 15 blocks long. Now, hoppers will sense that there's an item in there and give off a longer pulse, very much like a furnace would. But there's something really cool that you can do with hoppers, and we'll get to that in a minute. It's called a hopper clock. We'll get there. The other thing that comparators can do is when they are side loaded with a stronger, so you see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, worth of redstone go into that comparator. When it is side loaded with a stronger signal, in this case it's signal 1, right, it turns that comparator off. So it can compare signal strengths and will turn off or on accordingly. There's also a setting on here that's called subtract mode, and I don't fully understand it. I've never gotten it to work. I've never found a practical application for it. So I'm not going to go into that, and I'm not an expert when it comes to comparators. They are rather confusing. But it does have another mode. If you want to look up some information on that, by all means do. All right, next up. So we're just demonstrating that if this was my base door, can't quite make it, it doesn't stay open for very long. So what we want to do is we want to make this piston stay open for much longer, or closed, or open, So what we're using here is a bunch of comparators in a circle, right? I know, it's a rectangle, but just go with it. And what it's called is a comparator wind down clock. Now, this is important when you build it. So make sure that there's at least a gap of like 2 in there, because what's happening is this comparator is giving a strength of 1, and this one's giving a strength of 1, so on and so forth, making this circle. But every time that the redstone pulse, if you will, comes around, it loses 1 because of this. So it takes quite a number of revolutions before it finally winds down enough to unpower, right? So you can see it slowly degrading as the red gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and then finally the piston does not have any more redstone left and turns off. All right, so that's a wind down clock, and that's something that you will use on many redstone builds, especially for doors. this is my prime example here. So this is my base. That's my door down there, right? I want to get in my door. So I've come up to my base. I press the button. Oh, cool. I can walk through. Oh, cool. Now the door will just automatically close behind me, given time. And I'll say that that's a pretty long clock. Not clock, but wind down clock. So I guess it is kind of a clock. You could make it shorter than that, by fewer comparators. There's no magical number here. The main thing is that you have a gap of at least 2 in it somewhere so that it can wind down, because if you just put another comparator in here, it would never wind down. It would just be on all the time. It would just stay like that. But by doing that, well, we got into I'm sorry. Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. Okay, there we go. And put our button back. There we go. And then it winds down. Okay? So, on to hoppers. And that's going to be the next step we go on to, because I want to go into hopper clocks and that sort of thing. Now that we have a rough understanding of what comparators do and how they can take signals off of things that have things in them. So we could just put one item in there, right? It will give a signal strength, okay, in that hopper. And that's what really becomes important here in a minute. And also the fact that you can go through a block is the other really important thing that you need to know, because you'll use this. If you're building a redstone device, there's often cases where you can't get the comparator right up against what you want to compare. So being able to compare through a solid block is great news. All right, so on to clocks and how they can work for you. All right, guys, so our next thing was clocks and hoppers and that sort of thing. So let's go over what a clock is. A clock is a circular swirl of redstone signal, off of which you can get something to turn off and on again. Or at least one thing, and possibly more than one thing. If you like, we have 2 synchronized things pretty close to it, although they're not exactly synchronized because the pulse has taken a while to go by. This is just a circle made out of repeaters set on their lowest setting. It can be difficult to get one of these to light up, because what essentially happens is you need to put a redstone signal to it and then break it quickly. So see how it kind of locks up? So I have to break the input source, break one of the redstone things, and then put it back before that pulse dies, which I of course missed. So let's try that again. Break that, and put it back. And now we get into that circular swirl. I'll say that these can sometimes be unreliable if you're near chunk borders or things like that. And they tend to be a really cheap, really easy redstone clock. You can do the same thing with comparators. The downside to comparators is that they don't have the adjustability like a repeater does. So you need a few more of them to get into this sort of pattern. Again, not something that I use too often. I like my clocks to be a little bit more reliable than that. So let's talk about this concept. This cow needs to die. Okay, so here we have a hopper, and here we have a button in it. And you'll notice that the button is not flowing into the chest, which it should. And that is because of this lever that's on the side. The lever is in fact locking the hopper. So if I unlock the hopper, you'll see the button in the chest. Whereas if I lock the hopper, then the item stays there. Unlocked, it's in the chest and not in the hopper. All right? So we can use that concept to our advantage, and we'll get there in just a moment. Also, note that you can take a comparator signal off of that hopper that has items locked into it, but the second that those items are gone out of it, the comparator goes off. So what we can do is take 2 hoppers and put them into each other. So just simply put a dud block, put a hopper, break dud block, shift, and put your hopper into your hopper. So you have a hopper facing into a hopper. And what happens if you put one item in a hopper in a hopper? Well, that item bounces back and forth between those two. If you put more than one item in, it doesn't work as a clock. And that can be the downside to these clocks. If you don't cap them off and a chicken happens to be around and puts an egg in there, well, it can break your whole system, because then those items are trying to fly back and forth, and you'll notice that if we try to take a compare signal off of that, no, it's on all the time. And then trying to get those items back out of there can be a real nuisance. How did I put glass bottles in? I don't know. See what I'm talking about? There, we got it going again. But that's not what we want. So make sure if you build one of these simple hopper clocks that you put some blocks over top of it so the chickens don't kill your system. All right, so now let's take that concept a step further. So here we have the same hopper clock that I just showed you. We have two comparators, 1 and 2. And then 2 repeaters going into these blocks. And what we're able to do here is alternate the signal so that this one's on while this one's off, and this one's on, so on and so forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So if you have a farm that needs to have something on and then off very rapidly, this is a good way to do it. This is also a good way to pulsate. Let's say I wanted a dispenser to launch things into the sky, like arrows or items into a water stream or whatever. So this does it quite rapidly. It's not the fastest, but it's pretty rapid for what it is. And like I said, this is a very reliable clock. It does not matter so much about chunk orders or that sort of thing. So we can take that concept and step it up, because the problem with this whole clock is that it's just one item, which means we can't get any other timing except for this rapid timing out of it. So we want a much longer timing. We want an adjustable timing, and we step it up to the etho clock. Now there's 2 different versions. In this one, there's a block between the comparator and the hopper. All right, and then we have a dot of redstone here. When that dot of redstone is then igniting this block, which is turning this piston on. This redstone block is preventing this hopper from moving items to the other hopper, while this hopper can move items to this hopper. So it essentially locks up one of the hoppers at a time, which is turning this comparator on, and it creates a loop, and that's how you get a clock. The great thing about this is that it's completely adjustable. We can put in all these items, and until all those items flow into the other hopper, you see them starting to flow in here, this won't move, which means you can go 5 whole stacks of items, which is quite a bit of time between the movement of this redstone block, or the unlocking of the system to change it over. And this is just a slightly smaller version, same idea. We can go ahead and take all this stuff out of it, maybe. Well, now we've done it. Let's just throw a whole stack of stuff in there so it shuts up for a minute, okay? Or we just don't have that block and that block in there. Either way, I don't know why you'd want to use the bigger one, but there might be a case where you'd need to. And this one's just as adjustable as that one. And again, they are called the etho clock for the guy that invented it, whose name is Etho. And next up, we have this long hopper clock. Now it's just like we did with the hopper into the hopper, except for it's a hopper into a hopper into a hopper, making a figure 8. 8 hoppers, not a figure 8. But and every time that one item goes by, this comparator is picking up a signal. Now there's a number of ways that you can take a signal from these hopper clocks, or from these clocks in general. And one way is to simply, like this one, where we run a redstone line off the side and over to whatever we want to power or not power. Another way would be with the comparators off the hoppers into a repeater. You could go off on either side. As soon as I find the comparators again, there we go. So we could go off the front or the back, right? We can also go through that solid block that we talked about earlier. Like that works just fine. Okay? But like I said, that's a very rapid clock. So how do we take this setup here, this ether clock, has a number of ways that you can take a signal off of. For one thing, you could take a signal off of the hoppers themselves. And every time that hopper is empty, then that comparator kicks off and, you know, things kick back and forth that way. I'm just waiting for it. There we go. So the other way that you can do it is that you can directly power whatever redstone line you want off of that sorry, off that redstone block. So every time that block moves, that shuts that off. So you could do that on one on either side so that it's alternating. So that this is on while this is off, and that's on while that, yeah, so on and so forth. Same with this one. On this end clock, you could take redstone signals off of multiple points on it, which means that we could take up to, I don't know, like 8 or 10, let's say 8 different timings off of this clock, which could be nice. Again, this one has the drawback of chickens can mess with you. Also, trees, saplings, if they're dropping saplings, I've had that happen. All right, so for a zombie pigman farm, which is kind of the point of this video, I was trying to help my brother out and help him understand some redstone. A nice long clock like this is adjustable. For a zombie pigman farm where you're trying to ignite the portal and then extinguish the portal, what I found is 8 items in here is the optimum number. Maybe 7, but that's pushing it. All right, so that's that. Next up is another way to get signals off of these is using observers. Now, we haven't covered observers yet, so I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but it is another reliable way to take a redstone signal off of these. I think I can, let's see here. Can I? There we go. So you'll see that every time that block moves, that observer lights up because it detects a change, right? But the thing with observers is that they only give a pulse. So you see how it like double pulsed there? We'll watch again. So it's very rapid. It doesn't stay on like this does. And there are instances where you might want something to pulse like that. And there's instances where you might want a steady redstone signal. So using observers in this can be another effective way to read the signal of what's going on there. And that is hopper clocks, or clocks in general. And these are all very important clocks that you'll use over and over and over again throughout your builds if you get into redstone. All right, and we'll come back in just a couple minutes. Or I'll come back in a couple minutes. You'll probably still be here, all right? Shh. Take 5. Hey guys, so we are back. We have, okay, so what I want to do in this last little wrap-up episode is just go over a couple of things that I haven't gone over before, and a couple of things that I kind of learned along the way, and observers. Yeah, so first off, what blocks can be energized? So with this switch, I'm making this block hot, which of course makes the redstone behind it hot. Can't do that with glass. Can't do that with glowstone. Can't do it with slabs either. Can weirdly do it with the light source of the sea lantern. And that may in fact be a bug from what I've heard, but at this point it works. So the other thing is, and this one's kind of cool, glass, okay, so under normal circumstances, we put a solid block here. This becomes the pinch point right in here. You see that the redstone is not able to go down that line. It'll still go up it, but glass does not have that feature. So the connectivity still works through the pinch point of glass. Also slabs, as we kind of looked at over here, but glass will send up or down. So that's just kind of an interesting thing you might keep in your bag of tricks for some point in time where you need it. All right, so next thing up is redstone blocks. Redstone blocks are power sources. So underneath I have a sticky piston, and I'm just going to go ahead and lower it, and so you can make a switch. Actually, you can do a lot of things with redstone blocks. You know, a power source that you can push, because you can't push a lever. And, you know, you can push an observer, but then it gets into a pulse, which we'll look at in just a little bit. But this is a nice steady power source that you can manipulate and push around. Next thing is comparators. So remember back when I did comparators, the little snippet on it, I was not sure what subtract mode was. So what subtract mode is this. All right, so we have a redstone power source. Let's just go ahead and use our redstone block since we just talked about that right here and here. All right, so this is 6 blocks long until you get to this comparator. And this line is also 6 blocks long until you get to that comparator. Okay? So what subtract mode is when you press this comparator, right, the one in line, then if you side load it from another comparator using the same signal strength, actually I don't even know that it needs to be another comparator. We'll test that here in just a moment. But with the same signal strength as what it has behind it, then it turns this comparator off. Okay? So if we did that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and it still turned it off. Well, that flies in the I did say that I was not very knowledgeable when it came to comparators, so that allows it. Okay, when it's side-loaded at all, when a comparator is side-loaded at all in subtract mode, then this turns off. Whether or not the signal strength is stronger or weaker, really? It is quite odd to me. No. When it's weaker, it does not work. So it needs to be, when it's side-loaded with a stronger signal, on subtract mode, then it turns off. Okay, we got it. All right, so let's go on to observer. So observers will emit a redstone pulse out the back. So if we look at this, and you see, boom, you see that it pulses. It's noticing what's going on in front of it. So when you place an observer, you're at the business end of it. You're at the pulse end of it, and what it's observing is in front of it, right? So any change in this block that it's looking at usually will make a pulse. Now, it will not notice like a thing going through a hopper. Like, so if we put this here, no, I put it backwards. There we go. You'll notice that there's nothing going through. And this being Bedrock, when you place an observer, you do get an update pulse, but that's about to change on the next update. They're going to make it so that when you put the observer, it does not give a pulse, as it should be, in my opinion. Okay, so we can use this pulse to our advantage or not. All right, so let's kind of take a look at, well, we want to observe a clock, right? So let's stick an observer, and let's put one here, and we're observing this comparator. And you'll see that you actually get a double pulse. And let's just put this light here. See how it double pulses? So what's happening there is it's noticing that this comparator turned on, and then it's noticing it that it turned back off again. So that's why you get 2 pulses. To rectify that, what you can simply do is put a repeater in on 2 ticks between what you want to power and the observer. So there's your 2-tick delay, and then it'll get it steady. I call that fattening the pulse back up. All right, so that's just one thing to know about observers. The next thing is you can use this double flash to your advantage. So here we've just got, I'm using this lamp to denote when the pulse is coming through here so that you can see what's going on this side of the observer. And then we've got a dispenser with a water bucket in it. Now what's going on there is that double flash is essentially dumping the bucket and then picking the bucket back up again. This can be particularly useful in like a farm where you want to splash lava out quickly, or water, to maybe extinguish a zombie pigman portal or something like that. The other thing observers can do is you can trick them to kind of go around corners, right? You can actually do them. Let's see. How are we going to demonstrate this? Let's just go boom, 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 right? And then actually in between, you don't even need to have observers. You can use redstone torches or redstone dust, in fact. All right, so let's go ahead and power this, and we'll show you what happens up top here with the redstone. Now let's just use a piston. All right, so you'll see see how that works. So the redstone signal is coming up through this one, out this one, and up and through. So the dust is what's changing. Now, if we just did it this way, it shouldn't work. Right, because that is still attached to that block, that update. So you need the redstone dust there to transmit that signal up. And torches would work as well. Another thing that you can do is a lot of times when you move a piston in front of an observer, so we'll go ahead and turn this one on, you get into a redstone clock. Okay, what's going on there is that this is observing this, it's powering this, coming around here, pushing the piston. The piston head is then re-updating the observer, so that's why you get into that looping pattern. And there's a way to break that. So see how that worked. What's actually happening there is you have a non-sticky piston, just a regular piston, pushing up one. So that's breaking the signal. So what's actually happening is you're just getting one push of the piston, and that's what you want for some farms, like a pumpkin farm or a watermelon farm, where you want to be able to harvest the crops. You want the observer noticing that the crop grew, and then you want the piston breaking it. But what you don't want happening is a stupid clock happening, afterwards. You want to just harvest once and harvest once. Yep. All right, so that's observers in a nutshell. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I've tried my best to show you guys some redstone things, just the basic components, and kind of show you what I know, which is I'm not an expert by any means. I definitely struggle with redstone. However, I'm better than some people. So if you're a newbie, well, maybe you'll learn something. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks for putting up with the background noise. Have a great day.